Yeah, so I think that's Fallen Guardians. I'm really looking forward to seeing that completed. Um, and yeah, I think it's kind of tying up all these ends and just building on what was described, especially on the comic that depicted this period. So really happy with that. The other story that I think I'm kind of taking the lead on is uh, it's a sort of continuation story that takes place kind of just at the cusp of the Reformation, and it dramatizes how the Toamari escape the Goldskin Being's fortress. But in this version, I'm suggesting that the Toa Hag were involved in a breakout attempt. So the Toa Hag go to the fortress, they free the Toamari, and in the chaos and confusion of Samad's tale, they're all able to escape. But the big thing I'm trying to imply for this story, the reason the Toa Hag are involved is because when Tren Krom released them from Turidax's vision during Reign of Shadows, he left a lingering resistance to illusion, resistance to being charmed, that kind of thing. And even though Tren Krom is now dead, even though that's just happened on like this day, uh, that residual resistance is still there, still enabling them uh, to resist
Oh, that would
the
make
charm
sense.
effect.
I mean, that would make sense.
Okay. Um, yeah, one thing I'm kind of struggling with is how to actually show that though. Right, I think what I might end up doing is having right up until the moment where perhaps they meet the Goldskin Being or they're in the fortress but they're not affected. Um, but I'm struggling to reveal how that could be
I
shown.
would do it this way. I would have them see an illusion and then have it waver and blink out.
Okay,
So they would realize that for whatever reason, it's not taking hold.
okay, okay. I can work with that, and I think a big part of the narrative of this story is I want to suggest Iruni is going a different direction from the other Toa, and this was
Mhm.
kind of set up just before the rebellion of the Toa Hog, where Iruni went his own way, and Norik had to go chase him and bring him back.
Right.
Um, in this story, now he's a Toa again. Now he has this new chance to do exactly what he wanted to do before. And I kind of want to build on that. I think there was a particular moment in Dwellers in Darkness where Rooney just goes and teleports to the Shadow One ship, and he just kind of becomes more reckless and is more willing to take these risks to do things. And I think, in my understanding, that might lead him away from the Toa Hog. And in this case, I see him teleporting right into the fortress, right into the Goldskin Being, and maybe even having a conversation with the Goldskin Being. Um, one of the features of the story I want to develop is having the Toamari have a conversation with the Goldskin Being,
Mhm.
and them each be trapped in a vision where they relive uh, their desires or their darkest memories or a comfortable memory to retreat to. But for Iruni, because of the psychic shielding that they have, because of the effects of Tren Krom, the illusion doesn't stick. Um, and it would be kind of a warped sort of vision, but not really what the Goldskin Being is wanting to project. It's got none of the charisma, there's no charm. He's very aware that there's a 20-foot tall golden Skakti in front of him.
Mhm.
Whereas it's different for the Toamari. They see him perhaps as an old friend, or um, they see him as this figure who is here to help them, whereas Aruni doesn't. He's very aware of who this guy is. So perhaps, yeah, I think, okay, not showing the illusion, having Iruni dramatize that and having that be the moment where it makes sense to him and he realizes I'm immune to this. Perhaps that could work. But the risk of that is it's the Goldskin Being, it's right on the cusp of another story, and Salmad's tale is about to happen. Um, so it would have to be in the chaos of Anona arriving. So it's timing that right, and yeah,
Hmm.
I think that there is scope to make it work, and especially with Dwellers in Darkness and the role that the Toa Hag have in the lives of the Toa Mari. I think it would be important to have this whole sequence. I'm trying to figure out a way that I can dramatize Rooney being in a room with a gold-skinned being. I think his vision in particular, I'm struggling with, because the vision doesn't take. So he'd be in a sort of pseudo illusion, like he's still in the fortress, but he's also reliving a memory, perhaps. And I wonder if that memory should be the moment where he left the Toa Hag initially, or if there's a more significant memory or a more significant period of his life. Yeah, still working the details out on that one, but I think what I would like to do is to have the Goldskin being trying to find a wish he can grant these the Toa Mari, being as they are, so full of strife and just fresh from the loss of Matoro. He's trying to find something he can use to manifest, but he's not really finding it because all they want perhaps is to have Matoro back. But in Aruni, he perhaps finds that desire that he's been looking for, something to weaponize perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think
So
yeah.
you're interested in knowing a significant turning point in Iruni's life that the Goldskin Being could use?
Yeah, or how a scene could play out between these two characters. I mean, I understand that there's never been a discussion about them in relation to each other, but what would be perhaps the Goldskin Being's motive in being in a room with a Toa, or even being in a room with the Toa Mari, since they are around him?
Well, I mean, the Goldskin Being's whole thing is making dreams manifest. So if it doesn't have any beings around it, it can't do what it does.
Okay.
I mean, it's always going to be attracted to anybody who's, especially people who are strong-willed, because they would tend to have stronger dreams. It's like a lion smelling meat. I mean, it's attracted to that energy, that ability to dream, draws it like a magnet. So it can't really blow that off.
Okay. I guess I could use that to explain why he loses interest in Aruni and then goes off to the events of Salmad's Tale. Perhaps he senses a Nona and senses a stronger will in that
yeah,
direction.
I mean that's like a friggin' all-you-can-eat buffet. So
yeah. Okay.
That's so interesting.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I think my initial reading was that he does have this desire to kind of grant these wishes and bring forth these desires and make them a
Well,
reality.
you could also get into the fact that the Goldskin Being cannot dream itself.
Oh yeah, of course.
Otherwise, it would just make its own dreams manifest. But it can't. It doesn't have that ability.
Okay. I'd forgotten about that actually. Yeah, that was something I kind of stumbled upon in my research, but yeah, okay. And I guess he's trying to dream through these Toa or experience their desires. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things I want to do with the narrative is dramatize what the Toa Mari are going through, and in particular, what kind of dreams and visions they would have. So I've mapped it out, and I've had some good discussions with Peter. We've tried to dramatize what they would see in each of these visions. So specifically for Kongu, I've written a sequence where he reflects back on his time in Lake Horo before the Toa arrived, when the simplest things he had to worry about were Rahi. So it's kind of retreating back into that earliest stage to simpler times. For Huki, it's a similar thing where he retreats back to Coley to being a Matoran to those earlier trifles, but also backed up by the fact that if he had trained harder, if he'd been more capable, if he'd been faster or stronger, then perhaps the Battle of the Pit would have gone differently. For Nuparu, he's back on Voyanui. He's building the Zamor launchers, which he remembers fondly because that was the last thing he built that really helped someone after the Boxers, after the Vaki, after the string of bad inventions that have harmed. The Zamor spheres are the one thing he made that were good that he reflects on. And as well, it's a time when there was optimism over being a Toa. But in the end, instead of wanting to, as the Goldskin being is trying to coax him to perhaps dream of some weapons or something that can be used, something you, the inventor, the weaponsmith, can create from your mind, he eventually just decides he doesn't really have the fight in him anymore and doesn't want to build more weapons. For Holly, it becomes a sequence of her retreating to the pit, which was the time when she felt most powerful. This kind of all-powerful tower of water, fighting the Rahi armies in the fields of air. This time she knows all the moves. This time she's been in the battle already. She goes straight for the Baraki, and it's just replaying the fight over and over until she wins. But eventually, instead of embracing the barbarism, she decides she wants to go back to just being a normal Toa, to back to the surface, back to the civilization. Whereas with Jala, I want his to be the most complicated of the Toa Mari's sequences. And I think there could be scope for him wanting to take Matoro's place, perhaps. Being the only Toa of Fire to have lost a team member that weighs especially heavy on him, as well with his whole military background, with the Takoro Guard, with the expectations that come with that role. I think that there could be scope there for him to reflect and to wish it had been him instead. But one of the things I also want to do is not to involve Matoro too much, not to evoke his name until a much later point in the story. So he's this sort of overbearing shadow they're still reckoning with. So for Jala in particular, I wonder if I have that right. I wonder if that's really what he would desire. Or if perhaps he's further along, perhaps he's reconciled with the loss of Matoro, in fact.
No, I don't think he has. I don't think he has
yeah.
at this point. No.
Okay.
No, that's an open wound.
Okay. So I guess how would he deal with it then? How would Jala in particular respond to if he had the opportunity to go back and relive the memories, if he could do something different, how would he respond? Would he want to take Matoro's place, or would he?
Yeah, I think he probably would.
Okay.
I think he probably would. I don't think he could outside of a dream. I don't think it would have been possible because Matoro was the one who was destined to die. But
Yeah.
But I think he would make every effort to do it. I think you could almost go as far as he takes Matoro's place in the dream and dies, but it doesn't bring Mononui back to life because he wasn't the one who was supposed to do that.
Oh, that's really clever.
Nothing.
Okay. Yeah. And as well, that would solve if he just directly takes Matoro's place. There's no need to even use Matoro's name. Matoro can continue being this presence that goes unnamed in the story. And for the sacrifice to be nothing as well, that could work. And that would be a really dark twist as well.
Yeah, well, that's the whole thing. I mean, the gold skin being brings your dreams to life. He doesn't promise they're going to be good dreams.
Yeah.
That is true.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I like that. I can definitely write that down because Jala's one was the one I'm least looking forward to because I feel like it's harder to write for Fire Toa in general because they have generally bigger hero complexes and this gravity that comes with them. And for Jala being the team leader as well, to have lost Matoro and to still be in the process, it's got to hurt that much more. but yeah, that fixes the two concerns I had, which was naming Matoro and have I actually got this right. So yeah, that's perfect. That's
Solid.
really what I wanted.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. Out of interest, one of the goals of the story is to set up the return of Varian into the lives of the Toa. So Iruni's wish, Iruni's desire is to splinter off, to go his own direction. But he doesn't want to do that until there can be another Toa to replace him, until the Toa Ha can have a sixth member. So what I'm hoping to do is to have the gold skin being partially make that dream come true. So he has, he conjures Varian from her stasis sphere. So she just awakens in the desert, and that sets the stage for her to be reintroduced into the story, all because of Iruni's wish, because of his desire to have a replacement. And I think, that could lead to future stories. That could allow Iruni then to go off, and that leaves things, I think, suitably open-ended for another writer or for another narrative to take place, while also bringing Varian into the world again.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I think for a while I've really wanted to write a story about how the Toa Mari get free, and I think this will be it. This will be a pretty big story, I hope, that takes, it uses the tools that Salman's Tale gave it.
Sure.
Well,
to embellish it.
that's the beauty of Bionicle, and I think that's one of the things that, to me, sets it apart from a lot of other franchises, is that Bionicle for a writer is like being in a big room full of doors. And every
Mhm.
time you open a door, there's 6 other doors to open, that come off of that. That's why I always said you could do Bionicle stories for 50 years, because you're never going to run out of material. Even if you never invented another new character, you could write for 50 years.
Yeah.
To me, the real tragedy is that, and I don't think that Lego ever had any incentive to do this, was that they never bothered to try to get a publishing license even after the toys were over with, because it could work as a book series without any toys.
Yeah, it really could. And as well, there's scope for the aftermarket. If you're writing stories about discontinued toys, then that makes people want to buy those toys, to go
Yeah.
out of their way and
Yeah.
hunt them down. So even in
Well-
terms of marketing, that's of use.